Have you ever trusted a nursing home to care for someone you loved, only to find out, too late, that you had made the worst mistake of your life? That's exactly what happened to my family. My 74-year-old aunt was supposed to live out her golden years surrounded by professionals who promised safety, comfort, and dignity. We believed them. We trusted the polished brochures, the friendly admissions team, and the bright hallways filled with smiles. For a little while, it even seemed like we had made the right choice. But behind those closed doors, a different reality unfolded. Within months, my vibrant, stubborn, funny aunt, the woman who used to bake us cookies and laugh at her own jokes, had withered away into someone unrecognizable. She lost weight. She stopped smiling. And then, she simply stopped fighting. We blamed ourselves. We asked, how did this happen? Why didn't we see it sooner? The truth is, the real danger wasn't just neglectful staff or a few bad nurses. The real danger was a broken system designed to hide the ugly realities until it was too late. In this story, I'm going to reveal the nursing home secrets that families absolutely must know before it costs someone you love their dignity or their life. What happened to my aunt didn't have to happen. And if you stay with me until the end, it might just save someone you love. When my aunt first moved into the nursing home, we wanted so badly to believe everything was fine. The staff seemed friendly. The facility looked clean enough. Her room was small but cozy, and she even had a view of a little garden from her window. We told ourselves we had made the right decision. We needed to believe that, for her sake, and for our own peace of mind. At first, the changes were so subtle we didn't notice them. She started eating a little less at dinner. Nothing major. We thought, maybe it's just new surroundings. She seemed tired more often, choosing to nap instead of calling us for our usual Sunday chats. We brushed it off, telling ourselves she needed time to adjust. Then came the bruises. I remember the first time I saw them, small, purple marks along her arms. She laughed it off, saying she must have bumped into something. She had always been clumsy, she said, and we wanted so badly to believe her. After all, falls happen with age, don't they? We didn't press further. Looking back now, I realize how blind we were. Those bruises weren't accidents. They were warnings. Quiet, desperate warnings that something was terribly wrong. The weight loss came next. It was slow at first, a few pounds here and there. Her cheeks grew hollower, her clothes hung a little looser. When we asked, the staff said, "It's normal at her age." They reassured us that she was eating fine, that aging bodies sometimes just change. We nodded, accepted their words, because what else could we do? We weren't doctors. We didn't want to be paranoid. The biggest change, though, the one that still haunts me, was in her spirit. My aunt had always been a fighter. Stubborn as a mule, my dad used to say with a laugh. She argued about politics, complained about TV shows, told jokes that made no sense but always made us laugh. She was full of life. But within a couple of months inside that nursing home, her spark started to fade. She became quiet, withdrawn. Sometimes when we visited, she'd just stare out the window, barely reacting when we spoke. It was as if someone had dimmed the light inside her, and we had no idea how to turn it back on. I still remember the day I brought her favorite blueberry muffins, the ones she used to devour in seconds. She took one polite bite, set it down, and never touched it again. That was the moment I realized something was deeply, horribly wrong. But by then, we were trapped in a web of false reassurances. Every time we raised a concern, The staff had an answer. She's adjusting. She's fine. It's all part of aging. And we, desperate not to cause trouble, desperate not to believe we had made a terrible mistake, accepted those answers. We didn't realize that what we were seeing wasn't normal aging. It was neglect. Silent, systematic neglect. Now, I understand that the signs were there, flashing like red lights. The weight loss, the bruises, the emotional withdrawal, the slow disappearance of the woman we loved. But back then, we trusted too easily. We trusted the clean hallways and the cheerful nurses' smiles. We didn't know that under the surface, the nursing home was falling apart, understaffed, overwhelmed, and quietly abandoning the people they were paid to protect. And by the time we finally saw the truth, it was already too late. If you think you would see it happening to your loved one, I'm telling you now. It doesn't always happen with screaming alarms and obvious bruises. Sometimes it happens slowly, quietly, with small changes you can almost explain away, until one day you can't. And that's when the guilt comes rushing in, and you realize you should have fought harder, asked more questions, pushed back sooner. Because once the damage is done, you can't undo it. At first, we wanted to believe that my aunt's decline was just bad luck, a sad but natural part of getting older. Maybe we had just caught her on a bad day. Maybe this was normal. But deep down, something didn't sit right. The more we visited, the more we started noticing little things that made our stomachs turn. The staff seemed rushed, hurried, constantly looking over their shoulders. Some nurses smiled but never stopped moving long enough to have a real conversation. It was as if there was a script, quick reassurances, polished smiles, but no real care behind it. One afternoon, I arrived earlier than expected for a visit. What I saw still haunts me. Down the hallway, an elderly man was sitting alone in his wheelchair, slumped over. His lunch tray, untouched, sat beside him, cold and congealed. No one noticed. No one checked. He was invisible. Later, when I asked a nurse about it, she smiled tightly and said, "Oh, he's fine. He does that sometimes." That was the beginning of the cracks, the small glimpses into a world that wasn't as polished as it appeared. It wasn't long after that when I stumbled upon the news about Colonial Heights Rehabilitation and Nursing Center, a place just a few miles away from my aunt's facility. A place caught in a horrifying scandal. Text messages between nurses admitting they skipped medications for nonverbal patients, laughed about neglecting safety checks, and joked about patients suffering in silence. One of the texts still chills me. The people that can't talk didn't get so it was easy. Reading those words, I realized what was happening to my aunt wasn't random. It wasn't just her getting old. It was systemic. It was what happens when facilities are chronically understaffed, poorly supervised, and run like businesses, not places of healing. And the worst part? In states like Virginia, there are no laws requiring nursing homes to maintain a minimum number of staff per resident. None. It doesn't matter how many patients need help. It doesn't matter if nurses are stretched so thin they can't possibly give real care. As long as the paperwork looks good, as long as the boxes are checked, nobody in leadership faces consequences. They smile for inspections. They polish the floors. They coach the staff to say the right things. Meanwhile, people like my aunt, people who once lived vibrant lives, waste away behind those closed doors. The bruises? They happen because there aren't enough hands to lift someone properly. The weight loss? Because meals are rushed, and no one has time to help a frail woman cut her meat or remind her to eat. The emotional withdrawal? Because when every request for help is met with a tired smile and just a minute, even the strongest spirit eventually gives up. I used to think abuse in nursing homes was obvious. Shouting, slapping, outright cruelty. But now I know. The most dangerous kind of abuse is the one that hides behind smiles and normal aging explanations. It's the silent neglect that no one sees, until it's too late. If there's one thing I want you to understand, it's this. Not every nursing home is like this, but far too many are. And unless you dig beneath the surface, unless you refuse to be fooled by clean hallways and friendly greetings, you will never see the real truth until it's too late. We learned it the hard way. I just hope you don't have to. After everything that happened, after the bruises and the silence and the slow fading of my aunt, I wanted justice. I wanted someone to be held responsible. Not just the overworked nurses or the aides who were clearly stretched too thin. I wanted the people at the top, the ones who signed the contracts, pocketed the profits, and decided how many staff members were enough to answer for what had been done. But they never did. No CEO, no director of nursing, no corporate executive. Not a single person in leadership faced any charges, any real consequences. And the more I dug into why, the angrier I became. You see, the system is built to protect them. In Virginia, just like in 47 other states, there are no staffing minimum laws for nursing homes. No legal requirement saying you must have X number of nurses per Y number of residents. No rules that force administrators to hire enough hands to provide basic, dignified care. It's perfectly legal to run a nursing home with half the staff you actually need, as long as you can argue that someone was technically assigned to every resident. It doesn't matter if that someone has 30 other patients to care for. It doesn't matter if medication rounds are rushed, if hygiene is neglected, if patients sit in their own waste for hours. If something goes wrong, blame shifts downward. The staff who couldn't be everywhere at once are the ones who take the fall. The leadership shrugs and says, "We trained them. We had policies. If they didn't follow them, that's on them." It's a convenient lie, and a deadly one. The reality is this: no amount of policy can substitute for having enough hands, enough eyes, enough hearts in the building. When you deliberately understaff to boost profits, you are not just cutting corners. You are gambling with human lives. What happened at Colonial Heights, the text messages, the falsified records, the deaths, wasn't just about a few bad nurses. It was about a system built on intentional underfunding and intentional indifference. And the law allows it. There are federal guidelines suggesting facilities should provide a certain number of nursing hours per patient per day, but they are not enforced. They are recommendations, not requirements. Inspectors might cite a facility for being understaffed, but unless it's catastrophic, it rarely leads to anything more than a mild slap on the wrist, if that. Meanwhile, real people suffer. People like my aunt. People like your parents, your grandparents, your neighbors. The most vulnerable among us, abandoned in plain sight while corporations collect their Medicare reimbursements and move on. And here's the part that hurts the most. Even when someone dies, even when the neglect is obvious and horrifying, the executives almost always walk away clean. The nurses lose their licenses. The aides lose their jobs. Families are left with grief and guilt. And the people who designed the system, the people who created the impossible, deadly conditions, quietly move on to their next venture. I used to think justice was about finding who broke the rules. Now I realize sometimes the rules themselves are broken. And until we change them, until we demand real staffing laws, real accountability, the cycle will keep repeating, over and over again. In the next part of this story, I'll share the brutal lessons my family learned the hard way. Lessons I hope will help you protect the ones you love before it's too late. When someone you love suffers in a place you trusted, the guilt is unbearable. You lie awake at night, replaying every visit, every conversation, every little sign you missed. You wonder if you could have changed the ending. If you had just asked one more question, pushed a little harder, paid a little closer attention. The truth is, we can't go back for my aunt. But maybe, just maybe, we can help someone else by sharing what we learned the hard way. Here are the 5 lessons I wish we had known before it was too late. First, never trust appearances. Clean hallways, smiling staff, pretty lobbies, they mean nothing. The real truth of a nursing home isn't in the decor. It's in the unseen places. It's in how quickly call lights are answered. It's in how residents look when they think no one is watching. It's in the small signs of dignity, or the lack of it. If I could go back, I would have asked to see staffing schedules, checked response times, and insisted on random, unannounced visits, especially during weekends and overnight hours when staffing is often at its worst. Second, pay attention to small physical changes. Weight loss, bruises, dry skin, changes in personal hygiene. We told ourselves these things were normal, part of aging. But they weren't. They were signs of neglect. If you notice changes in your loved one's appearance, even small ones, don't let anyone dismiss them. Trust your instincts. Investigate. Demand answers. Third, monitor emotional and mental changes. My aunt didn't just lose weight, she lost herself. Her spark, her humor, her stubbornness, it all faded faster than it should have. Withdrawal, confusion, sadness. These are not just signs of old age. They are often silent screams for help. If your loved one seems different, quieter, sadder, detached, don't assume it's just part of getting old. It could be a sign that something is terribly wrong behind closed doors. Fourth, demand transparency about care logs. Every medication, every repositioning, every hygiene check. It should all be documented. Ask to see it, regularly. Don't accept vague answers like, everything's fine. Get specific. What time did she eat? When was the last bath? How often is she being turned to prevent bed sores? Facilities that have nothing to hide will gladly share this information. Facilities that resist? That's a giant red flag. Fifth, don't be afraid to act quickly. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Too often, families wait, hoping things will get better, afraid of being seen as difficult or overreacting. We did too. We gave the benefit of the doubt. We trusted the reassurances, and we ran out of time. If I could say one thing to every family with someone in a nursing home, it would be this. You are your loved one's only real advocate. If you won't fight for them, no one else will. Move them if you have to. File complaints if you must. Raise hell if it's necessary. Better to be too cautious, too demanding, too protective, than to live with the regret of being too late. I wish someone had told me that before we lost her. I wish I could tell you that my aunt's story had a better ending. I wish I could say we realized what was happening in time to save her. But we didn't. And that's why I'm telling you now. Don't wait. Don't assume. Don't trust too easily. Behind the polished floors and the friendly smiles, too many nursing homes hide a reality that families aren't meant to see until it's too late. Understaffing, neglect, silent suffering, they don't always show themselves in obvious ways. Sometimes they creep in quietly, stealing the life from someone you love, one missed meal, one unanswered call light, one lonely night at a time. You have the power to change the outcome, to question, to fight, to protect. Because once the damage is done, there's no undoing it. Trust your instincts, demand better, and above all, never forget. The dignity of your loved one is worth every uncomfortable conversation, every hard decision, every fight you have to make. They deserve nothing less. Thanks so much for being here with us today. We'd really love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us one thing you took away from this video and how you're planning to use it in your life. Your thoughts truly matter to us, and reading your comments gives us the energy to keep going. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who might need it.